Dave will come up in a few minutes when I'm done. Up here.
There
Okay.
you go.
How's that? Okay. Now we can go ahead and hit the lights because we're going to do mostly slides, and I'm going to talk about Blue Spring Cave and the discovery and exploration of it a bit.
We'll try it.
How did you get it before?
That didn't work for lights.
Is that the lavender cave?
Whoops, I went through the button like that. Hal Love, he's also a hard-charging caver, but he's also on the cutting edge of fashion. So he helped put together the slideshow, so I wanted to give him some credit. I'm sure he appreciates it. Just like I said, on Blue Spring Cave, you can go to the next one. This is the topo overlay, the original cave. If you notice, right there's the original amount of cave, about 500 feet. Wow. And there's the scale down there, about 2,000 feet. That's what it was listed as for years. Gerald Money told me about it, said it was a blow and crawl in it, so one day after our lead gutted out up in the Catskill Valley, we headed over there. And, sure enough, it was a blow and crawl, so we came back about, I don't know, 8 or 9 times, and finally enlarged the hole.
Oh, sorry. That was me.
This is the original crawl. It was pretty tight, to say the least. First time I went in there, I had a wheat lamp on, which I never did again, but I had to kind of spiral and twist around to get through it and get back in there. And go to the next one. And there's Trey back in there, where it's one of the tight spots along through there. Had a number of different tight spots. And there he is trying to fit his way through there. It's been considerably enlarged since then. It's like a mine now.
So it's Trey.
And there's one of the big spots in the crawlway. Taking a break. It's Trey and it's Andrew Monk there. And there's all the rope we used for the 15-foot pit. And there's Trey and Greg Johns, and I think that's Patrick Turner there behind Trey. He's kind of small, so he's covered up. And that's, again, right a few feet before the pit. And this is the high narrow spot right before the pit. It's been enlarged considerably too. Originally, when we went in there, it was too narrow to pass in the bottom, and you had to chin, well, right before the pit, to chin you up high and go back down several times to get through there. And there's the hole we blasted open. Originally, it was about 5 or 6 inches in diameter. You could just peek through it and see down. And we worked on it a number of different trips and finally got it big enough to get through there and drop the rope through. And there's Trey demonstrating his armpit rappel. It was so tight, it was kind of a pain to use a rack or a seat sling or anything like that, so we just did body rappels usually.
Can't you get kicked out of the NSS for doing that?
I don't think he has been. I don't think he's
There should be a rule.
He had to pay dues.
He's not actually a member, so I don't think that. And there's after a long trip, we had some 24-hour trips. It was pretty tiring coming back up the road there too, so he took a break about halfway up the 15-foot pit. And there's the bottom of the ladder. Lonnie later installed a ladder, so we did away with the rope. There's all the debris from where he enlarged the hole there and landed in the trunk there. And there's Andrew on the way back up one time, just peeking up through the hole where you had to climb up through there. That was kind of hard with all your gear on. That's considerably bigger now. And once we got down there, we got into this really nice formation passage. It was walking, and we went, and it just got nicer and nicer. Lots of big formations like this. Really pretty area. And here's some more. So it's really nicely decorated, this area here. It's, hadn't got under the cap rock yet, so there's lots of flowstone. And then on that first day when we broke through, we extended the cave that little bit I showed you before out to about here. We saw about a mile or so that first day. We didn't survey that first day though, we just kind of ran down. And there's the spring too, by the way, the little blue spring itself right there. And this is, after the next few survey trips, we added a parallel whirl section And this was a crawlway that started out and got into some walking passage here. And then the passage made a weird turn and started heading up Blue Spring Cove like that. This was a nice trunk way, we called it the flake way. There's one of the flakes. I'm not sure if this one was still there or not. One of them got broke. It was a real nice, what I call ceiling peelings. They curled off the ceiling, and real delicate flakes like this. Real pretty stuff there. But most of the passage is just a dry, easy trunk. And if we got out there, we broke into the mega junction section. We've got very complex, very large, all these multiple passages. This is a river passage here. This is a big Xanadu type trunk here. Multiple other passages here. Go ahead. Here's a shot of a mega junction. Somewhere in mega junction, I think there's some people down there. And another shot of it. Somebody over there. And that's, I think, where we came out right in that. We popped out right there. So we popped out there. We were pretty happy that day. We broke into there. And then off of Mega Junction, one of the passages, what's called the Bosnack borehole, took off under the plateau, which is pretty unusual for Tennessee Cave to head under the cap rock of the plateau like that. And in that passage, there were lots of nice gypsum formations. This is one, I forget what we call it, it was just a twisted little curly cube. Lots of other gypsum. And then another one, a gypsum beard, we call them. And some various other things. These are just in the floor of the passage to walk along. There's not any just real large displays of gypsum, but here and there, there's pockets that are really nice like that. There's another one. And then the cave was extended even further, went out back in under the escarpment again, and another passage took off under the cap rock over this way towards Gear Cove. Another passage was found to head up Blue Spring Cove, so it's getting pretty complex through here. And various other passages were being added back in here over the time there. And then it just kept getting bigger, headed out under Gear Cove there. We went back here, ridge rocking some, and found some leads back in here. It's kind of funny to go back in here. The guy was pretty particular about not letting people go back there, so one time we went back there with John Fred. He only wanted 2 people to go in, and we had Doug Clemens with us. So we hid Doug under all our caving gear in the back of the truck. We drove back there and poked around, and actually did find some caves. There was one here blowing air, and one back here that's been covered up since, but they're pretty close to there. And here's the, this isn't quite up to date, there's a little bit more in here, but essentially over 33 miles of cave here. You notice one interesting feature, it crosses under a lake, about 800 feet under this lake here on the plateau. And these are mostly just large fossil trunks. It's just a dry fossil trunk there. It does get a little damp out in this passage here. For the most part, they're dry. There is a river passage that follows pretty much this path, like that, up there. And I think it's pirating Gear Cove and flowing over to Blue Spring itself here. Another interesting area is this cathedral room up here, which is a large room in the cave, and some really nice formations. And there was also a lot of stuff added out here and in various other places in here. This is, I forget what we called this. It was a grotto before the cathedral room, and real well decorated, lots of flowstone, rimstone pools and such. And there's another shot in there. I think that's Bill. One of the pools, you had to go climb up over the flowstone, and then you climb down a 50-foot drop or so. And this is in the cathedral room. It's about 200 or 300 feet in diameter, about 75 feet high or so, with 5 or 6 pits in the floor. And it's really decorated along one side of it. There's one of the big flowstones there, and a dome pit in the ceiling going up. And then another one there. And this whole wall is just covered like that along one side of the room. It's really pretty. And a close-up of it there, Hal looking at it. And that's the original entrance now covered by a pillbox that we put in there to protect the cave. And this was after Hal did the radio location to find a new entrance after they got his shoulder hurt and everyone. Lonnie wanted to have another entrance to make a rescue easier if ever the need should arise. And so they did a radio location and started digging by hand, and they figured out, well, a backhoe might be a little quicker. So they brought a backhoe in, and it's Lonnie up there working on that. And then they're working down the hole there. Steve McDonald digging out there. They hadn't broke through yet. Here they've covered up some while they're working on it. There's the gate that Bill Overton, stainless steel gate that he made to go on the new entrance there. He engraved it there for us. And there's Lisa standing by the new gate there. This cuts out about nasty crawlway. You heard they were going to put a bridge in there. And, the first plans were a little over-ambitious, so they redesigned it. And the next one, I went to this model, which worked out a lot better. And it's a nice little suspension swinging bridge there. It avoids a crawl across a diverse ledge over there. It was kind of hairy. And this is, we actually have a tour guide now. He loves to take people in their own tours, you know, psychosis along the way. You know, I tell you who that is, but Hoppy might get mad. We're going to go back to Oklahoma, and I'm just going to tell you a few other interesting things about the cave itself. 33.
Oh. What do I do?
Survey's still ongoing. There was a survey trip in there a weekend or two ago. They surveyed 500 or 600 feet, I think.
Oh, he wants to go back to that.
That's it.
Sorry.
Some of the interesting things about the cave, this point back here is about 6 miles from the entrance. And before they dug that new entrance out, the old entrance was the only entrance. Some other interesting things, there's been a dye trace done from back here in G's survey that came out at the first river crossing here. Plus we've got all this big stuff here headed that way, so there's a big blank area in the mountain here where ought to be a lot more cave. The cave seems to form by piracy of Deer Cove. This is the oldest part of the cave where trunks have formed flowing this way, and they seem to have subsequently developed parallel, cutting deeper into the plateau, and these trunks cut further back in there. Another interesting thing is this T survey. This is a downstream passage headed into the plateau. It's like in terms of the dig there, it's going into the plateau that way, downstream, which is pretty wild. And let's see. Check my notes, see if there was anything else. Pretty much it's all in the Monteagle limestone. There is another cave called Ravenscoff Rift back here that's in the Bangor with some 90-foot pits. It was pretty extensive, and we went there and dug a bunch. But it's right on top of the cave there. It connect in and make the cave about 400 foot deep and make a pretty good through trip too. But it's probably going to be a future generation before that happens there. There's also a lot more caves scattered all around the mountain there too. We had digs back here trying to connect in there. And Hal's going to do a radio location trip out in this area next weekend to try to see if that might be close enough to the surface to open up an entrance there. Probably our best lead in the cave is right there, the big trunk that collapses and breakdown with just tremendous airflow. You're standing in about a 30-foot diameter passage, just wind blowing by your face. And we've been in there and dug several times. We'll go back sooner or later. It's a pretty hard trip back there. Any questions about it?
When did you find it?
What's that?
They're going to be 100 mile long day, I heard about earlier.
Well, possibly. There's a England Cove is up in this area, and we've got leads up there that blow tremendous air, and if this could get past Deer Cove, it could go in the back of the England Cove, and there's tremendous potential up there, so you never know. Take a while, though.
Will it not like to go into the plateau?
Where was the second entrance?
The second entrance is, I think it's right there. The old entrance was, I believe, right there, right at the curve of the road.
How does that end up there?
There,
No, the next one.
there.
Uh-huh.
I think it just closed down to belly crawl, and it's got just too low, I believe. I think the same thing, a little cut off there. And this really, there's probably still leads out there. I know of one over here, and probably other stuff still out there too. There's various other leads. Mike Rogers drew up a map. It's in the other room, and he said, I forget how many leads he said he found as he drew it up. There's probably 50 or more leads. So there's still a lot of stuff to be done.
So how long should typical survey take?
Well, the longest ones we had when we were serving out here would be 24 hours or more. But like that last one, they went into here somewhere and surveyed. It was like 9 hours. To go back here is pretty good long term. Even though it's almost all walking, there's a long crawl through this section, but the rest of it's almost all walking. So it's pretty easy, move pretty fast, but it's just a lot of walking.
How many camps set?
Jim Smith camped back here by the Third River Crossing one time. That's about the only time. The rest of the time, we just keep on going.
From the entrance to the far point, how far is that, and how long does it take to walk back?
That's about 6 miles, and you could probably get there in 5 or 6 hours if you keep moving pretty good. All right, I'll turn over to David to do his talk on Nunley.
While David's coming up here, I want to tell a quick story on Joel. Sarah Winter Business Meeting, that's where they give out awards, I guess, for Sarah. So there's something called the Francis McKinney Award, which I guess is still and was then the most prestigious award for cave exploration in the Southeast. And John Hoffelt and I at lunch just sat down and said, we looked at all the nominees and we said, well, Joel Buckner's ever won this award. So over lunch, in the space of like 12 minutes, we wrote out a nomination. I forget how many miles of Virgin Cave and Survey Cave went into that application. And of course, later that night, Joel Buckner was awarded the Francis McKinney Award and just blew away the competition. So sorry guys that were up that year. I guess you had to wait a year. Next up is another fine cave explorer, another recipient of the Francis McKinney Award. He somehow knew the judges and got that award back in 1985, I believe. Is that right?
Well, I had to pay him.
Okay. He had to pay him, but more importantly, he was one of the guys, along with Joel Buckner and Drex Freeman, who discovered Nunley Mtn Cave in Grundy County. And I'll turn it over to that fine explorer, Mr. David Parr.
We're getting there.
Well, I don't get to see that.
Can somebody get the lights?
We're trying to get a map up here on the screen here.
I'll do that myself.
Oh, you got a map up there? Oh, yeah. Good. I didn't look at that.
Well, we didn't know you had a map either.
Well, nobody see that. I just brought his security blanket. Where's the little pointer thing?
Oh, you have to request that too.
How do you work it?
Yellow button.
Yeah, okay, got it. Okay, I'm going to talk about Nunley. Nunley Mtn Cave, and probably less than a dozen people in this room have been to the cave, probably. It's kind of been cursed. It's been a blessing and a curse for me. I need to get my notes or I'm just going to flail. I'm not really comfortable doing this, kind of out of my comfort zone. But to start off with, the first mention of this was by Ed Yarborough. This was in the, I guess, the late 60s probably, because it got in Larry's book in, 71, is that correct? And it was a cave only 12 feet long. And these days it never would have made it. It would have been forgotten. But Joel Buckner saw it in the book and he said, well, let's investigate that. So we decided to take a day of vacation. It was like a Thursday, and so Drex Freeman and Joel and I went up to the entrance. And we walked up, we met Mr. Savage. He was about I guess he was probably in his 90s then. But he told us to go on up there and have a good time. So we went up, walked up the creek bed, and saw a beautiful double waterfall, and right to the right of it was the entrance to Nunley Mtn Cave, or what is Blowing Cave, but what would be Nunley Mtn Cave. So we went into it, and sure enough, 12 feet later, there was a rock in the way. And we wrestled this rock for probably 6-7 hours. But I mean, this thing was blowing gales of air. I mean, it would blow stuff in your face when you dug in it. And so eventually we got this rock out of the way, and we squirmed our way through the chitlin, which is a real, you have to be there, or you had to have been there. It's a real gnarly, muddy, terrible place to be. And so we went through that, and it was about 12 feet long also, and went to a room, and below the room was a 42-foot pit. I think it was 42 feet, something like that. Anyhow, we went, of course, we were stopped that day. It was late in the day, so we went there on May the 1st of 1982. It was right after a TCS meeting. We brought bukus of cavers with us, 15 in all, I think. And everybody was wanting to go into this new virgin cave. And so we all went up to the entrance. And the only ones that went into the cave that day were Joel Buckner, Drex Freeman, and myself. They all looked at it and they said, uh-uh. So we rigged the pit, went down it, and ran through about 4,000 feet of really, really nice cave. It was real similar to Cumberland Caverns, very similar to it. And we went to the right of the entrance. To the left, it went to a place where we could see up a climb, and it looked like a parrot passage up there. But we saw, about 4,000 feet, headed out, told everybody else what we found, and of course it made them sick. And Jim Hodgson went the next day. I have to say that. He didn't go through the next day. And so the next trip there, we decided we'd go to the left of the entrance and go up this bolt climb. So Brad Neff spent several hours setting bolts. We went up there, and he got up to the top, rigged a rope for us, and we went up and got to a place where there was, it was kind of low and wide, and it had all these stalactites hanging down, which played a halo on your back. You know, and we called it the backstabber because of all the injuries that were through there. And got through that and got to some very nice walking passage, and it ended in a deep rift. And where's that? Hey, right here is the entrance to the cave, right there. And of course, we saw a lot of this that first day, and this is where the rift was. We went there, and we went around a pit, and we walked up this way, and that's about 1,000 feet of real easy walking passage. We call it Easy Street. We explored the OK Way, we was all walking, all this stuff here, and then we surveyed our way out from right here. And we called it a trip, and while Jeff Sims took a team and they surveyed all this stuff in here. And the total that day we surveyed was, I think, over 4,000 feet. Okay, Drex couldn't stand it, so he took another weekday off, went back to the cave, went to the, what was the end of Easy Street, which is right here, right there, and he did this real hairy climb. You go like about 30 feet back, and you start shimmying up this thing, and about 20 feet up, you step across. And you get into a continuation of it, and Drex went through here, up and down some climbs, went over here and stopped at the wind hole. And this right here is like 40 feet wide and 50 or 60 feet high in places. Very, very impressive. And so naturally we knew where to go the next weekend. So we started surveying at Easy Street, and we surveyed all the way to the wind hole. And the wind hole was a hole about 4 inches in diameter that was just booking out air. Very, very strong air. So we dug through that, and expecting to find miles of deep cave beyond, of course. And of course we did eventually, but to our luck, we started crawling. And we crawled, and we crawled, and we crawled, and we crawled. And we crawled some more. And well, this is where the crawl stops right there. But we went into here and got into the sand trunk right there, and which was about 50 feet wide and 20 feet high. Very nice. And we explored some around that, then we decided we wanted to continue the survey through the crawl. Went through the crawl, and Jeff Sims had broccoli the night before. And so I don't have to tell you about it. But anyhow, this is Broccoli Boulevard. And, it was a very, very nice passage, all walking, about 20 feet high, very easy walking. And we got to this place right here, and all of a sudden the floor went down, and it got big. I mean, real big. We went up there and we explored some of this stuff here, and then we went through some, kind of under some house side boulders, and went into this area here. Then it got really, really big. It was like 60 or 70 feet wide and 50 feet high, and there was needles all over the floor, amphibites everywhere. It was a dream come true, actually. And then we decided we'd take a little stroll up here, and we found a bear skeleton laying there right in the middle of the passage. And then a little further down to the left, there was a mummified fox. I mean, you could see his eyeballs in the sockets and everything. And then more bear skeletons were found, and hundreds of smaller bones everywhere. I mean, it was just a literal boneyard up in this area. And so we stopped at this point here, and then we continued the survey, and we stopped right here where it was 120 feet wide and 60 or 70 feet high. We stopped the survey there. Of course, naturally, the next weekend we came back and we surveyed to there. It ends in it's under the plateau right here. We found more bear skeletons there, and it goes up a huge breakdown. It's probably 60 or 70 feet high. Over the other side it ends. And we've tried to get through this breakdown, and we've found other ways, but nothing's gone all the way through. Okay, let's see here. At this point, I got a letter from David Stepp, and he told me how he got this letter from these people that, they own this cave, and they just were generally interested in the cave. And so he advised me to go ahead and write to them and tell them, what we found. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes of my life. And anyhow, we soon had the pleasure of meeting the Ramseys. And anybody that's been caving for long, has heard of the Ramseys, most likely. I mean, they were real characters. When they met us, they said, okay, this is how it's going to be. Y'all survey, we'll name the places for you. And no girls allowed. And just lots of rules, detailed trips, trip reports every trip, and we go in them when they tell us to go in, and pretty much that kind of stuff. And it just kept getting worse and worse. I mean, the landowner relations. And one day I came home from work, there were the Ramseys in my driveway. So I invited them in, and they tell me, well, you got to do this way, you got to do it this way. I'm just a cave explorer, and that's what I do, I guess. And I was, mapping it to my best ability, and I was giving them what they needed. And they were wanting to name stuff. They wanted this right here that he called James Watt Lane. Ronald Reagan turnaround. I could go on, but I won't. And it just, it was awful. And then after a while, they started visiting all kind of cavers. One day I got a phone call at work, and it was Buddy Lane. And he said, you need to learn to control your landowners. If I remember right, they'd gone to his place where he worked, and they wouldn't leave. And Buddy had never even been to this cave. And Roy Davis ended up having some dealings with him, if I'm correct. And I don't think y'all got along real well. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, Holiday, you talked. Okay, I was trying to get somebody that could communicate with these people, but it didn't work. And I guess y'all know why, right? Yeah. Okay. And anyhow, so the trips to the cave kind of slowed down, to say the least. But anyhow, we had a lot of going cave. That was a good thing. And so one trip I decided I wanted to push south into the cave, right into this area here. So we started surveying in this area here. And we split up into two teams that day, right in here. we surveyed to this point, decided to split it into 2 teams. My team went this way, the Jack the Scraper crawl. And Joel Butler led a team through this thing right here, and they went through the pop out and got into Straw Hall, which is about 80 feet wide, 15 feet high, with thousands of soda straws everywhere. Just all over the place, and beautiful formations. Real good trip for them. And of course, they surveyed to about this point right here. And so the next weekend we went back. We were trying to get all the cave we could while we could, because we knew the history of the cave would be short because of the landowners. So we started here surveying, and we started surveying through the glass crawl. And we surveyed and surveyed through this crawl. And I think we surveyed 1,500 feet of this crawl without, it's still crawl. And so everybody was ready to go. So I went ahead and pushed ahead a little more. I think we stopped the survey there, and then slowly it started getting bigger and bigger right there. And it got into nice walking. And I turned around at this point right here. Well, I like this next story I'm going to tell you. It's about Jim Hodgson. He's here, isn't he? Yeah, there he is. Okay, anyhow, Jim had this idea that he wanted to go back to this area where I'd stopped. So he went back to this area, and he went through this place here called the Clyde Crawl. And he kept going through this place, and it was a low, wet, damp clay crawl. So he went through it, and it got pretty low, if I remember right. That's what he told me, anyhow. And he went on back out. And so he told us, how terrible it was, but it needed surveying. So I went back with Drex and Jimmy Freeman. And anyhow, we got back to this point here, surveyed where the Clyde Crawl started. I'd seen it on the previous trip. And Jimmy looked behind this rock. He said, "What's this down here?" I go, "What?" He says, "Big walking passage." And so anyhow, we looked behind this rock, and sure enough, there was a big walking passage right in there. And so we started surveying down this thing here. Thousands of feet we surveyed. And at one point, we started encountering guano. And the guano, was about ankle deep for a little ways. And then all of a sudden, it started getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Pretty soon, we were up to there in guano. And there was these pits all along the floor, too. So we were kind of afraid we were going to fall into one of these guano-covered pits. I mean, it was, I never encountered anything like it. This guano was so old, it was like, it had like a crust over it. Underneath it, it was like baby powder, just pure white. It was really unusual. And so we kept going down this thing, and it was about 15 feet wide and 20 feet high. Just nice, easy walking passage. And we got to this point right here, and all of a sudden, the floor dropped away, and it got really big. And so Jimmy and Drex, they stuck the survey stuff aside. And they went on ahead. Of course, I took the survey stuff and put it in my pack. And anyhow, we went down here, and we were exploring a passage 80 feet high. Well, right from here, 80 feet high and about 40 feet wide. Just real nice, clean canyon passage. And we went to it, and went to the end of it, and it ended at some water coming in. And by that time, we were carbide cavers back then, and we were all out of water. And the only other way to get out would probably be to pee in our carbide lamps. So we were real lucky to find this water. And anyhow, we got to this point there, and so I pulled out the survey equipment. I said, let's start surveying. So we surveyed out, and that trip ended up being, I think, 16 hours long. It was one of the best trips of my life, actually, that one there, because we were so far from the entrance. Anyhow, I think around that same time, Joe Douglas and Roger Ling, I believe it were kind of walking around, and they found a big sinkhole up in Wanamaker Cove. And they found the entrance to Dripping Springs Cave right there. A big, huge sinkhole about 80 feet in diameter and 50 feet deep. And so, there was a place where the water sunk underground, and there was a big log blocking the way. So eventually the log was pulled out, and they started exploring this cave. And they didn't tell me about it at that point, because I was having fun other places. And anyhow, they explored down a 43-foot pit this time. down in, through Sky Canyon, through some dome complexes, got to Joe's Crawl, and then went through several wet climb downs to a 25-foot pit with, which is right in this, let's see, where is that? Right in this area there. All this right here is about 800 feet of cave. And so they got me, we went back the next weekend and we started the survey of the cave, got down to here and stopped surveying and explored Halloween Hall up to this point here. This was Halloween day that we did this. And later on, Joe went back with some other people, and what happened was ended up being a rescue that day. The cave was too wet, there was too many people, and I wasn't on that trip, so I can't really comment on it too much, but it was a bad deal. And what I neglected to say earlier was right before the cave was found, it was a trip we were planning to go way back here deep into the cave, but Bill Walter had actually injured himself that trip, digging in another cave. And I think was it your hand that injured Bill? Your back, okay. Okay, well anyhow, so he said he can't go deep into the cave. So I thought, well, I'll check the end of the cave this way here, right in here. And there's a place called the Final Room. And I figured we could go low to the left and get through. So I went down low to the left and started digging.